Hello, what is your name and your parents and your sisters?
My name is Marvin Miller, and my dad's name is Daniel A. Miller, and my mom's name is Fanny J. Miller. I have no brothers, but I have four sisters. My oldest sister is Clara, and then I am next, and then I have a sister by the name of Elizabeth. We call her Liz, and then we have Edna and Wilma.
And are they still living?
Yes, they're all living, and we get together every year for a get-together. But then the nieces and nephews said, no, we're going to have to get together more than that because we're getting a little older, you know. And so we get together on each one of our birthdays.
What is some of the earliest memories of your childhood?
I remember one thing that my mom told me. She was baking cookies, and I was probably a couple, 2, 3 years old, and I was eating quite a few cookies, and Mom says, now if you don't quit that, I'm going to hang you up on that nail on the wall. And so Dad came home, and he said, if you eat too many of them cookies, you're going to get dizzy, you're going to get sick. But I didn't.
Where did you attend school?
We went to Madison Township High School, and all our neighbor kids, they were all Amish, and they had their own little school, but we lived in St. Joe County, so we had to go to the Madison Township High School. And I went there until I went through the freshman year. Then Dad took me out of school and told me I didn't need no high school.
And you were raised Amish?
Yes, I was raised Amish, and when I was going to school, I decided that sooner or later I'm not going to be Amish. I decided I'm not going to swing a hammer the rest of my life.
And you were raised as a farmer?
Yes, one of the things that I had to do when I went to school, I'd come home from school when I was 7, 8 years old, and I had to go in and change clothes, go out in the field, and take care of the horses, and anywhere from 4 to 6 horses. And I'd done the plowing, the harrowing until dark, because Dad would do the chores.
And what other animals might you have had?
Oh, we had cows. I remember my sisters milked the cows because I had to work in the field, but we had hogs, and we had chickens, and we had a number of different animals.
And what did your dad do for a living?
My dad farmed, and then he had a thrash machine, and he had a ring just north of where we lived that he done the thrashing. And then when I was 14, I had to go to the south ring, and I worked as a hand in thrashing.
Was that pretty hard work, I think?
Yeah, that was pretty hard because I had pitched the sheaves up on top so they could load them up on the wagon, and then they went up to the thrash machine and run them through there.
And where did you meet your wife, and how did you get married and all that?
I met Fannie Mae when we were just younger, because my mom and dad stood up for her mom and dad when they got married. And then we were together as friends and got together for ice cream and different suppers. Then later on, we didn't get to see each other until we were in our teens.
And where did you get married then?
We got married at in a barn north of Napanee at Eli Stutzman's farm.
And what did you do after you were married then? What was your job?
My first job I had after I was married is I worked for my neighbor, and I could drive the tractor, and I done some farming until fall, and then I went to Napanee, and I worked at the Napanee Lumber and Manufacturing Company, which they called U-Lines at that time.
Tell us about any travels that you had when you were young.
The only travels when we were young and still with Mom and Dad, I think one of the biggest travels we had, we took the horse and buggy and went from Napanee to Middlebury, Indiana. And we thought that was a long trip, and it was. It took a long time to go. It took us almost all day. We stayed overnight, and the next day we came back. And we thought that was a big trip.
And where did you live all this time then?
After we were married, we moved several different places. And we lived in Napanee, and then I moved to the farm, and then we also built a house over in Goshen. And I worked at Churn and Ladder, and there's where I bought the land to build the house on from the owners of Churn and Ladder.
You lived on the farm. Where was the farm at, and is that still a farm now, or?
Yes, I first farmed at my father-in-law's place, which was 1.5 miles north of Napanee and 1/2 mile east. And that's where I done the farming. And from there, I moved to my dad's farm, and I farmed there for several years. And then I started working in a trailer factory.
And you said earlier, not on the tape here, that you stayed at the farm of your mother and father-in-laws. Tell us a little bit about that.
We had a good time when we lived there, because my father-in-law, he didn't quite go along with some of the Amish people. So what he did was he had an old Fordson tractor, and we hooked the plow onto that, and that's how we done our farming. And it was quite interesting the way that old tractor, no rubber tires, just all steel, but it done the job.
And then he also drove car later on.
Yeah,
when was that?
Later on, they went to Florida, and they started going to one of the churches down in Florida. And he came back, and he said that he's going to change churches. He went to the Beachy Amish church, and he got a car, and he made a big difference in his life.
And you were saying earlier that you and your wife stayed on the farm and took care of the rest of the children, or brothers and sisters.
Yes, when we got married, the first winter, we stayed on the farm and took care of my wife's brothers and sisters, and it was. I think we done that for 2 winters.
Tell me a little bit. We have a couple of minutes left here. Do we have? Tell me about going into business for yourself.
I decided I was working for a lot of different companies, and just about every company that I worked for, I was always in charge of as a superintendent or as a foreman, and so I decided that I was going to go in business for myself. In 1968, I started a business with a friend of mine, and we called it Newmar.
What companies did you work for before you started?
I worked for Franklin Coach, I worked for Fan Coach, and worked for Holiday Rambler for quite a long time.
And I think you were pretty high in the ranks there at Holiday Rambler, were you not?
Yes, I was executive vice president at Holiday Rambler, and then when I was 40 years old, I decided to go in business for myself.
Okay, that's the end of part 1.